of the detectives from years ago in the cold case unit used the saying, "You never forget," or "We never forget." And I like that philosophy, and that's one thing that with our unit is we always are open for more information. We have a lot of cases, but wherever the information comes in, that's where we go, and we continue to work for them. And for the families out there, we want them to know that we're never forgetting. They're active cases, they're here. It's nothing that's on the shelf collecting dust. We're constantly looking over things, and we're constantly taking their phone calls.
We don't forget about these type of cases, and that it is important for people to understand that we need their help. And we know there's people out there that probably do have information, and over the passage of time maybe think that their information isn't as important as it should be, but they need to talk to us.
Janice Johnson went missing. She was 42 years old. She went missing November 1st, we believe, 2001. It was a Thursday. She was reported missing on Friday, November 2nd, by her husband, and she has not been located since then, and she has been deemed deceased.
Janice was an old soul. She was young and vibrant and beautiful, but she had the morals and values of someone way older and much more experience in life.
Janice was, to me, beautiful, wonderful, loving, genuine, because she always had her own thoughts and her own ideas, pretty much hard to influence.
We used to take long walks in Doyle Park. Sometimes we'll take the path, and sometimes we'll walk all the way 1 mile one way and 1 mile back. And she would just enjoy it so much, and she was such company. But the good part about that was, after we did all our walking, she said, "Come on, let's get something to eat." And we had so much fun together, yeah, and I miss it. Really miss it. At a young age, she started setting goals for her life, and she always wanted some kind of business. She had books on how to start with nothing and have something. She showed it. She really wanted to do something with her life.
Janice started her family at a young age. And this is what really surprises me about Janice, that even as a young mother, she knew what she needed to do to keep her kids in line, to keep them straight, to keep them on the right path.
She raised those children to whatever life deal you pick up and go on. But she wanted them to have more in life. She came to me one time, and she was saying that her mother gave Kiana so many years and gave Mario so many years, but she didn't give me but 15 years. And she said, "And I miss my mama." And she crawled up in my lap on my sofa and cried, and I just let her cry. And she cried. I love her. I still, And I think it was, sometimes I feel a little guilt myself, because it should have been something that I could have done or paid more attention as to what was going on. And yeah, I do. But I know now that I prayed about it and everything. I can't do anything else.
In Cold Case Unit, we have numerous unsolved homicide cases. We also have a number of unsolved missing persons cases. Obviously, with the homicide case, we already have a location of the body, we call venue, where it's going to be prosecuted and so forth. When you're dealing with a missing persons case that's 25, 30 years old, you're pretty confident that that person is deceased. So you don't have the venue, you don't have the location to work with.
Cold cases in and of themselves are complex just because when we get the cases, we're actually reading the cases. And a lot of the times they're dated cases. We often don't have witnesses immediately there close by to talk with. Right now we're following a paper trail, and sometimes that's difficult because you know, you have to kind of make your own goals and set your own way. With this particular case, there was a lot of legwork that was done immediately upon the initial investigation. So we were very fortunate to have a good timeline.
Well, as soon as the family came in and made the initial report, we sat down with the family and tried to figure out where she could be. That's when we realized that, you know, looking back, the last time she was seen by her husband, Edward, was the night of the 31st. After he had gone to work, he didn't have any further contact with her until he attempted to contact her the next day after he had gotten off of work and was leaving for classes at J. Sargent Reynolds. No one has seen her for a day and a half. Obviously, unlike her, not to call her mother several times a day, to see her children, to be at home, as well as to see Edward or talk to him. At that point, obviously, something was wrong. You have to look at family members, the husband. Once we kind of rule those people out as not being persons of interest, it kind of leaves you with who's left.
Coming in as a second detective, a second set of eyes on a case, you want to chop a case apart. You want to look for inconsistencies. You want to look for where the case turned left where it should have turned right. And I couldn't find them in these cases.
The family had already kind of put us on to the business partner, Dung Tran, who was supposed to be doing real estate transactions with and getting into real estate with him. During the initial stages, at that point, we immediately start looking at bank accounts or court orders done for her phone records, for her credit cards, for anything where she could be spending money.
But we were able to determine that there was $10,000 drawn out from Janice and put into a joint account that both Dung Tran and Janice had access to. The reason that she pulled this money out and put it into a joint account was for the real estate business. However, the $10,000 was pulled out after her disappearance by Dung Tran, almost immediately after her disappearance.
Once we started looking into Dung Tran, we realized, you know, he worked in an auto parts store. He didn't have any of the background as far as real estate goes. He had fraud in his background as far as a criminal history. At that point, we really started trying to look for Dung Tran and to talk to him and see where things would lead from there.
Obviously, as a missing persons case develops, you try to talk to any connection that's out there, and Dung Tran was not available. And it turned out he actually fled the state. When she was on a probation violation, he couldn't leave the state, so that sent up some warning flags.
We know that they had had some interactions with property and with trying to get the investment up and going because we know money was leaving her account as early as October 10th. So we know they had at least a partnership at that point in time. Once we get to October 31st, we find a Mr. Carter who was trying to sell a piece of property over in the east end of Henrico County, and we know that she had attempted to make contact with him to view that property. They look at the property, walk the property, and then negotiate an $80,000 purchase price for the piece of property. One of the things that we knew just from the financials is that they didn't have $80,000 to put down on a piece of property or to purchase a piece of property with. So again, it just led us even further to believe that she was being defrauded and she just didn't know it. After they leave the property in the eastern portion of Henrico County, they go down to a McDonald's at Route 10 in Chester. They order food. They even, when I talked to the staff there, they even remembered that Dung Tran had Janice's purse while she went to the bathroom and that he paid for the order from the money out of her purse. And then they ate their food at the establishment and then left. And to our knowledge, that's the last time anybody had seen Janice alive. We have no one that has seen her. We don't have any financial tracking of her. It's like she just dropped off the face of the earth. Now on November 6th, we get a phone call that her car that had been reported stolen had been located at the Walmart on 360 inside the Hanover County line. We went out, looked at the car, had it processed, and even tried to get the videotape from the actual parking lot of Walmart, but where the car was parked, they didn't have video footage from it. We didn't get any evidence out of the car that would lead us to Janice's location.
Based on lack of physical evidence, we cannot declare it as a homicide. At this point, it appears that some suspicious circumstances did occur with Janice. We do have a suspect of Dung Tran. However, we have not been able to locate Janice, and we do not have enough physical evidence to place a charge for homicide against Dung Tran at this time. One of the things that I was tasked with doing as a missing persons investigator was ensuring that all of our cases were entered into NamUs, which is the National Missing Persons Database.
During the initial investigation, the toothbrush of Janice Johnson was collected for potential DNA. It was the protocol at the time that the DNA would be held in case there was an unidentified body located that we would need to match up. Due to DNA advancement, when the case was reviewed back in 2010, that toothbrush was submitted to the Department of Forensic Science for DNA inclusion into the national database. Once the DNA is in the national database, it's continually run to compare any other potential DNA matches.
You know, people could come up with all kinds of potential ideas or plausible ideas as to what happened to her, and we weren't able to act upon those. We had to go with what we found at the time, and following the trail that we did led us to Dung Tran.
There's a letter that we have on file where Mr. Tran makes an admission to some of the family members that he participated in, that if they would comply with some of his requests, that he would assist them in helping locate or find Miss Johnson.
Dung Tran is currently on trial for homicide in Nassau County, New York. That was a situation where he befriended an older lady, convinced her to provide money for him for a business deal, and when she confronted him about retrieving the money that she had put forward for the business deal, he's accused of shooting her in the head and leaving her for dead in her car in her driveway.
In a way of this documentary, maybe somebody who knows Mr. Tran from years ago, maybe had a conversation with him that we're unaware of. We would like to have that person reach out to us and talk to us about it. Henrico Cold Case. Well, in the cold case unit, during our days, you get phone calls from many different families who have missing people out there. But I couldn't imagine how hard it is on the families not having that tombstone to go to. Ms. Johnson's now been missing since 2001. This family struggled with this missing persons case for all those years.
I guess maybe the last 5 years, I think I kind of think she's not coming back. And a lot of times I think she's still here. You know, like I dial a telephone to call her. And sometimes you're walking or you may be riding somewhere and you see somebody, and from the back you say, oh, that look like Janice. And then when they turn around, it's not Janice.